Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Today we're featuring a domination battle on the Loop map starring Musaloob in the Vampire 2. It's a Commonwealth destroyer. Basically it's a Commonwealth version of the Daring with the Commonwealth creeping smokescreen. I mean, there are other differences, but it's not really important, not in today's video. I'd like you to take a look at the matchmaking. This is a tier 10 battle. Everyone is tier 10, so you can't possibly complain about the matchmaking. There's no bottom tier ships, or you could look at it another way, everyone is bottom tier. It's a completely even playing field, right? Oh, you poo naive fools. People can always complain about the matchmaking. Dear viewers, I'd like to draw your attention to Zulu 2 Scroot, the carrier player in the Manfred von Richthofen, who even before the match has started is already complaining. Now, I am not a German speaker, so I've had to use Google Translate, so there's probably going to be some inconsistencies here in my translation. Anybody who does speak German, any Germans, Austrians or Swiss out there, feel free to post any corrections in the comments, but I'll do my best to give you a running translation of what the Manfred von Richthofen player is whining and bitching about. So he started off by saying to the losers in the green team, "Let's lose ourselves. This manipulated shit makes no sense." Yep, he's complaining about the matchmaking. He's in one of the most overpowered aircraft carriers, which themselves are the most overpowered class in the game, and he doesn't like the matchmaking. And that's not all. Again, this is where the translation gets a little bit dodgy, so any help in the comments would be appreciated. Before he gets going again, the rest of the team start asking him to speak English, and then we have a brief comedy moment in chat when people start asking him to speak all kinds of different languages. Note that he is not launching any aircraft, and he's moving ahead. What are you talking about, Jingles? I can quite clearly see some aircraft circling his carrier. Yeah, those are his patrol fighters. They are not under his control. He hasn't actually launched any of his squadrons, and he's not going to. Meanwhile, back to chat. Again, these are some of the parts where Google Translate kind of fails me. I don't know if that's because Google Translate just isn't very good, or because his grammar is atrociously bad and Google Translate is having problems translating it. Note the enemy carrier, the FDR, is striking him with rocket planes, and he's doing nothing about it. Meanwhile, he's been waffling on in chat something about whoever created this shit about airplanes should have spared it. You can't fly an Immelman maneuver with that shit. Not entirely sure exactly what he's saying there, unless he's complaining about his carrier being underpowered. I'm beginning to get the sense that this might not be a problem with Google Translate. He just has an extremely tenuous grip on reality. But later on we are going to see that his apparent contention that his carrier is underperforming is actually based in reality and fact, although not in the way you might expect. Anyway, you can see there in chat that the enemy carrier is at a loss to explain exactly what this guy is doing. Well, what he's doing is actually quite simple, and also explains how he has the time to type this bollocks into chat non-stop, because he's put his carrier on autopilot and he's just sailing it straight south right into the enemy team. He's suiciding. He hasn't launched any of his squadrons, and he's sailing straight into a hail of gunfire and a hail of torpedoes. And he's dead. He just suicided in a tier 10 carrier right at the start of the battle. That's not going to shut him up, of course. But we're going to switch back to Musaloob's perspective for the remainder of the battle while we talk about what just happened and why. Now, first I want to take you back into the mists of time. Those of you who've been following my channel for a few years now may recall a certain infamous World of Tanks player, possibly the worst World of Tanks player ever. I've featured him not once, but twice. In fact, he's spawned his own memes that even made it onto Know Your Meme. The infamous unfair plane He Kemper Bush. Yes, does everybody remember Schrader? Now, I'm not saying that this is him. I mean, it might be. Schrader is a German name after all. But I'm definitely seeing certain similarities here. The complete and utter grasp of even the most basic game concepts, the total lack of anything even approaching a grip on the fundamentals of reality. And in this case, what appears to be, although I could be wrong, it might just be Google Translate pulling my leg, but what appears to be a fairly poor grasp of the fundamentals of his own language. Schrader at least had the excuse that he wasn't a native English speaker. It's all on display here. But what Musalub believes is happening, and I'm inclined to agree, mostly because Zulu, the carrier player, began the match by complaining that his team were all losers and that the results of the battle were being manipulated. So what we believe is actually happening here is that the carrier player is being influenced by something that kind of began in World of Tanks, and unfortunately is beginning to migrate over to World of Warships as well. And I'm talking here about the infamous mod for World of Tanks, XVM. Actually, XVM isn't a mod. It's a collection of mods. It's a mod pack. And most of the mods included within XVM are perfectly fine, and there's nothing wrong with them. But the reason that XVM got such a bad rap in World of Tanks was because of one of the features of the mod pack, and this was the feature that polled external databases in order to display by color-coding the various different players in the team lists on screen depending on how good or bad they were at World of Tanks, by win rate basically, and then took that data and presented an estimated percentage chance of your team winning or losing. And taken in isolation, there was absolutely nothing wrong with that either. It was a very useful tool. I mean, perhaps, well, there's no perhaps about it, it was definitely giving you information that you wouldn't have had access to just by playing the game, but you could use that positively. For example, if you're locked into combat with a player that you could see had an atrociously bad win rate, you could afford to take chances that you wouldn't take if you were facing somebody who was a super unicum. Now, whether or not you think that's good or bad isn't really the issue, because what people actually did with that information from XVM was, of course, use it to be toxic in chat towards any members of their team who had a bad win rating. Which is one of the main reasons why World of Tanks introduced the anonymizer, so XVM wouldn't be able to display the appallingly bad win rating of the appallingly bad players to people who were using XVM. What XVM also started causing was people just quitting out of the battle at the start of the match when they saw that the majority of other players on their team were so bad that XVM rated the chances of their team winning at less than 50%. And that was enough for a lot of people to simply quit out of the battle back to the garage, which of course meant that their team did lose, because you lose 100% of the games that you don't take part in. Now, thankfully, there is not anything like XVM in World of Warships. In World of Warships. Unfortunately, there is something like XVM outside of World of Warships. If you run a multiple monitor setup, you can be playing World of Warships on one screen and have the matchmaking monitor app running on your other screen. And the matchmaking monitor is an app that does exactly what XVM's worst feature does. It displays real-time data on the win rating, the overall win rating, the win rating in ship type, the personal rating of all of the players on both teams, and color codes them accordingly. And I know this not because I actually use Matchmaking Monitor. I mean, I was aware that it existed, but I didn't know exactly what it did or how it did it, but because Musalub here in the Vampire 2 uses Matchmaking Monitor, and he sent me the screenshots to prove it. A screenshot that I'll show you later. But what that screenshot showed for this particular battle, here on the loop map, was that the average win rating of all of the players, himself included, on Musalub's team came to just over 46%, which isn't good, but it's certainly far from terrible. And the average win rating of all of the players in this battle on the enemy team came to just over 53%. So a 7% difference in win rating between teams. It's certainly true that Musalub's team had the majority of the poorer players, but a 7% difference is not big. I've seen games in World of Tanks with the XVM mod running where teams that were predicted to only have a 24% chance of winning absolutely crushed the enemy team. And the reason for this is because the enemy team were also running XVM, saw that they had a predicted 76% chance of winning, and stopped giving a shit. Because this is what things like XVM and Matchmaking Monitor do. If you can see that you're facing a team of potatoes, you stop caring. You stop fighting the enemy team, and you start fighting your own team to try to get the lion's share of the kills, the damage, the credits, and the XP. It lulls you into a false sense of security where you think that your team is unbeatable, and it's not unbeatable. 76% chance of winning isn't 100%. And if you stop respecting your opponents, and instead you're competing not against them, but against your own teammates to farm the lion's share of damage and kills on them, you take risks and chances that you wouldn't normally do against an opponent that you respect. And you get your own arse kicked. I've seen it happen many, many times. Now, Musalub is using the matchmaking monitor. He's got it running on a second screen while playing this battle. But he's not letting it dictate to him whether or not he should even bother playing. Instead, he's noting that, well, yeah, the team isn't quite as good as the enemy team, so he's going to have to dig in harder, work harder, in order to get the win. And that's as it should be. The carrier, on the other hand, saw that his team were mostly pretty bad and just gave up right at the start. And that's particularly ironic because the guy in the carrier, and I don't normally do this, because stat shaming, it isn't big, it isn't hard, and it isn't clever, but I feel he kind of deserves it, because he has a 24% win rating in that aircraft carrier. Just stop and let that one sink in for a moment. I'll let you mull it around in your head for a while. The guy with a 24% win rating in the Manfred von Richthofen suicided because his team was bad. Yeah, that really happened. I did warn you, he had a very fragile grip on reality. And I did say, because remember earlier he was complaining in chat that, well, he appeared to be complaining in chat, I'm not entirely sure what he was saying, but he certainly seemed to be complaining in chat that the Manfred von Richthofen was underpowered. And I said that that was actually based in fact, despite the fact that it is also one of the most overpowered of an overpowered class of ships. Because it is underperforming when he's in charge of it. A 24% win rating in a particular ship. He did more for his team by suiciding at the start of this match than he would have done if he'd actually bothered playing. He is so bad in that ship that he actively hurts his team's chances of winning by using it. His overall account win rate is, well, it's better than the shockingly bad 24% win rate in the Manfred von Richthofen. He has an overall account win rate of 43%, which is still pretty bad. And he is the second worst player in this entire battle by overall account win rate, although he's easily, by far, the worst player in this battle by personal rating, which is, wait for it, I'm not making this up, 29. Just to put that into context for you, if you don't understand what the personal rating is, Musalub here in the Vampire 2 has a personal rating of 1043. So 29 is really bad. And that, kids, is the guy who quit because his team was bad. And the team are struggling. Matchmaking Monitor's prediction wasn't that far off. The team are behind on points, they're behind on kills, but not by much. They can still win this. Mussolub's going to have to work pretty hard, as are the other two surviving battleships on the team. But here's the other thing that Matchmaking Monitor revealed. Those other two battleships are also fairly bad players. I mean, they're not terrible, but they're certainly below average, with an average win rating overall on their accounts of around 46%. The friendly Yamato player struggles a bit in the Yamato. He only has a 37% win rating in that ship, but, well, here's the thing. They're at least trying. They're not quitting. They're not letting some arbitrary app or mod tell them what they should and shouldn't do. They're fighting it out. And they've actually managed to equalise, and the team now have 2 of the caps, and the kills are even. That's not bad for a pair of players with a 46% win rating, one of whom only has a 37.5% win rating in the ship that he's playing. I guess it's just amazing what you can actually achieve if you A, actually give a shit, and B, bother to try. And in fact, the team are about to go ahead with 2 caps. There's less than 10 points difference between these two teams. And the kills are even. That Zhao could be a problem, though. Well, actually, the biggest problem for Mussolub is the enemy carrier, because it's the FDR. It is the most overpowered ship in the game. And that's saying something, considering it's also a carrier. Fortunately, he doesn't have to worry about aircraft just yet. They are now ahead on points. Ah, shit. Here comes the FDR's rocket planes. He's got his AA guns off. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Torpedoes away. He's heading away, giving the FDR time to head in a different direction. No, he's coming back this way. He's been spotted. Okay. AA guns on. There's absolutely no point in holding his fire now. He's been spotted anyway, and he's been radared. So this is going to be a bit tricky. His engine's been knocked out. There goes the damage repair. Or damage control. And here come the rockets. And that was pretty bad, but it could have been a lot worse. Unfortunately, he's kiting away and the rockets knocked out his rear turret. Actually, that's a bit of a blessing in disguise, because it means he has to stop shooting. He's out of radar range of the Petro, and the Petro's managed to miss, and those aircraft aren't going to hang around forever. If he was still shooting back, and even though his turret is repaired, he is not shooting back because he knows he just has to wait for those aircraft to disappear, and he'll be able to go undetected again. Or he would, if that wasn't an FDR, and an FDR's rocket plane squadron didn't have more aircraft than the entire Royal Air Force. So he pops the smoke. Unfortunately, the Petro is pretty much doing exactly the right thing. He's closing the distance. Oh my, wow. Lucky strike from the FDR there. That was unfortunate. But the Petro's closing the distance, because he's going to spot him with his hydro. And Mussolub has to choose between the devil and the deep blue sea here, because if he leaves the smoke, the FDR's going to get him. And if he stays in the smoke, the Petro's going to get close enough to hydro him. So it's pretty much a question of who do you want to be killed by. Since the Petro's coming anyway, gets a couple of shots off, starts creeping forward, wants to get those torpedoes away. And he's out of the smoke, and here come the FDR's dive bombers. And of course the Petro can see him anyway. There's no way he's going to survive this. It's just a question of who's going to get the kill, and it's the FDR. Well, of course it is. He did get the torpedoes away, though. Now the team are still ahead, because they still have 2 of the caps. But the only 2 players left on the team are 2 of those bad players that caused the Manfred von Richthofen to suicide at the start of the match. Players with a mere 46% win rating, which isn't terrible. It's only just below average. But regardless of what their statistics might or might not say, these two players are at least doing something right now that I often see far better players who should damn well know better not doing at this point and under these circumstances. Even Musaloob just said there in chat, GG to the other team. He thinks it's all over. And looking at the health of these two surviving Battleship players, that's not an unfair assumption to make, but well, here's the thing. What are these guys doing right now? They're ahead on points, by nearly 100 points. They have two of the caps. The enemy team have to kill them both in less than a minute in order to win. So instead of trying to win any harder than they already are, they're disengaging. I often see far better players who should damn well know better not doing this. These are below average players, and they're doing everything right. Unfortunately, the Yamato's gone down. Equally unfortunately, it's going to be next to impossible for the Grosser Kurfürst to get out of there with an FDR spotting him from the air. But he only has to stay alive for another 15 seconds, and he's doing everything he possibly can to ensure that that happens. The FDR closing in for the final strike. One rocket hit will be enough to kill him. And he's got the rockets away, and he's got him. Well, shit. Except the battle timer expired before the rockets hit the Grosser Kurfürst. So that means the losers won. Yeah, you can tell a lot about players by their statistics. But don't for a second believe that somebody's statistics tells you everything that you need to know about them. And I do so enjoy it when the underdog wins against the odds. But the odds of losing for the team in this match weren't that bad. There was only a 7% difference between the two teams. It's just kind of ironic that the player who quit was one of the principal reasons why his team's overall win rating was as bad as it was. In fact, he was so bad in the ship that he was sailing that his not taking any part in this battle actually improved his team's chances of winning. The irony of which, I am sure, is completely wasted on his tiny little mind. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm going to leave you with the final matchmaking monitor screenshot that Musaloob sent in. So you can peruse that one at your leisure and draw your own conclusions from it. But that's it for today. As always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.